They train you to march. They train you to shoot. They train you to obey. They drill you until your hands bleed and your mind is numb. But they can never train you. For the moment, the man next to you simply vanishes. This is the story of my first day at war, the day I learned what pure animal terror feels like, and the day I became sick with fear. What do you believe is a soldier's greatest fear in his first battle? The noise, the bullets, or the unknown? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe so you don't miss the next true story from the front line. My name is Eugene Sledge, Private, K-Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment, the famous Fighting 5th. But in the summer of 1944, I wasn't a fighter. I was a boot, a replacement, green. My journey had taken me thousands of miles from my home in Alabama, across the Pacific, to a godforsaken island called Pavuvu. This was our staging area. They called it the resort. It was a joke. It was a rotting coconut plantation, drenched in constant miserable rain. The mud was ankle-deep. The stench of decay was everywhere. But the mud wasn't the worst part. The worst part was them, the veterans, the old breed. These were the men of the 1st Marine Division, the men who had survived Guadalcanal. To us replacements, they were not just men, they were gods. We studied them, we revered them, and we feared them. They were lean, hard, and hollow-eyed. Their skin was yellowed from malaria. They were quiet. They looked old, not in years, but in experience. They carried an aura of grim finality. They had been to the island. They never called it Guadalcanal, and it had marked them. We, the replacements, were just noise. We were loud, naive, and terrified of what was to come. They looked at us with a mixture of pity and contempt. We hadn't been blooded. We hadn't seen it. I remember one veteran, we called him the Gunny, watching us drill in the mud. He just shook his head. "You boots don't know nothing," he'd rasp. "You think you're tough. You ain't tough. You're just future casualties." His words chilled me more than the rain. My closest friend was a fellow replacement, a private named Robert Oswalt. We'd whisper at night, trying to imagine what it would be like. What was it like? The old breed wouldn't talk about it. When we'd ask, they'd just stare through us. "You'll see," was all they'd say. We spent our days on Pavuvu in a state of constant low-grade dread, cleaning rifles until the metal gleamed, packing and repacking our gear, worrying, waiting. Then, the orders came. We boarded the assault ship, the USS Sumter. The mood changed instantly. The waiting was over. This was it. The ship was packed. We were jammed into tight compartments, breathing hot, stale air. For days we sailed. And we were finally told the target, an island, a tiny speck in the Palau group, Peleliu. The briefing officer was confident. He pulled down a map. "Marines," he said, "the main objective is this airfield." He tapped it with a pointer. "Intelligence says the island is defended by about 10,000 Japanese." We shifted in our seats. 10,000. "But," he continued, "the Navy is going to pound this island flat. It will be the heaviest preliminary bombardment of the Pacific War. Admiral Halsey himself is overseeing it." He smiled. "The island is small. The 1st Division will hit the beach here. We expect resistance to be disorganized." The official estimate? This will be hard, but fast. 3 days, maybe 4. 3 days. We looked at each other, wanting to believe it. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. A quick, hard fight, and we'd be done. But I looked over at the veterans of the old breed. They were sitting in the back. They weren't smiling. They were cleaning their rifles. Again, their faces were stone. They knew something the briefing officer didn't. The night before the landing, D-Day was the worst. Nobody slept. The ship was silent except for the hum of the ventilation and the distant heavy thrum of the engines. It felt like a tomb. I sat on my bunk, my gear laid out around me, my K-bar knife, my leggings, my helmet, my rifle, which I must have disassembled and reassembled 5 times. Men wrote letters home, letters they hoped would never be sent. I tried to write, but my hands were shaking. What do you say? Dear Mom and Dad, tomorrow I might die. Love, Gene. I gave up. I checked my gear. Canteens, full. Ammo clips, oiled. First aid pouch, secure. I thought about my training. I thought about home. I thought about the girl I'd left behind. I thought about God. I prayed, not for victory, but just to be brave, to not fail, to not let down the man next to me. The dread was a physical thing. It was a cold, heavy weight in my stomach. This was it, the final exam. And I was terrified I would fail. It was 5 a.m., D-Day, September 15th, 1944. Hit the deck! Hit the deck! I scrambled up the ladders into the pre-dawn darkness. The air was hot, humid, and thick with the smell of diesel fuel and sweat. And then I saw it. The bombardment. It is impossible to describe. The entire horizon was on fire. For miles in every direction, our fleet, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, was erupting. The USS Pennsylvania was firing broadsides. The Mississippi, the Tennessee. The sound wasn't just noise, it was a physical force, a continuous rolling roar that shook your teeth and vibrated in your chest. The sky was ripped apart by shells. The island of Peleliu was gone. It was just a black shape, obscured by a mountain range of smoke and orange fire. I stood there, paralyzed by the spectacle. This was the greatest display of raw power I had ever imagined. No one could live through that. No one. The briefing officer was right. This would be easy. We were just going to walk ashore and pick up the pieces. K-Company, K-Company, stand by to go over the side. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. We moved to the rail. The sea was choppy. Down below, bobbing in the waves, was our Amtrak, our LVT. The landing vehicle tracked. It looked like a small metal box. Over the side! I grabbed the cargo net. My hands, slick with sweat, gripped the rough rope. I swung my leg over the rail and started the long climb down. It was chaos. Hundreds of men loaded with 80 pounds of gear clinging to these nets. Men were yelling, cursing. A man below me slipped. I felt his helmet bang against my boot, but he held on. I finally dropped into the LVT. It was hell. We were packed in, shoulder to shoulder, 25 men in a space built for 15. The heat was suffocating. The air was instantly foul with the stench of diesel fumes from the roaring engine and vomit. Men were already seasick. They were hunched over, retching between their knees. There was nowhere for it to go. We just stood in it. The LVT lurched, broke away from the ship and started the long circle, the milling forming up with the other waves. For what felt like an eternity, we just circled, waiting, packed in that hot, stinking metal box. I was choking on the fumes. Then the coxswain yelled, "First wave is on the beach. We're going in. Stand by." The LVT turned, the engine roared, and we headed for the smoke. We passed the main line of battleships. The sound. If I thought it was loud from the ship, inside this metal box, it was physical. The LVT's own engine was deafening, but when the big ships fired over our heads, the concussion wave hit the hull like a giant's hammer. Clang! It felt like the LVT was being torn apart. We hit the coral reef. The vehicle shuddered, tilted violently, and then screeched as its tracks gripped the coral. We were out of the deep water. We were moving across the lagoon, and that is when they opened up. The Japanese were alive. The naval bombardment hadn't touched them. They were in reinforced concrete bunkers deep in the coral ridges, and they were waiting for us. Mortar shells began to walk across the water. Hoomp, hoomp, hoomp. Geysers of water erupted all around us. The water, it just boiled. Machine gun bullets, zzzt, zzzt, began skipping off the water's surface and pinging off our hull. We were helpless. We were 25 men in a tin can. We just crouched. We looked at each other. The color had drained from every face. The naive confidence, gone. A man started praying. "Our Father, who art in heaven." I crouched lower, my helmet pressed against the cold, vibrating wall. Then it happened. An LVT, maybe 50 yards to our right, just vanished. 1 second, it was there, full of men, just like us. The next, a direct hit, a brilliant orange flash, a column of black smoke, and fragments, just pieces, flying through the air. We all saw it. A man screamed, "Oh my God! Oh my God!" I couldn't breathe. My stomach turned to ice. Those were men, gone. In a microsecond, the terror. It wasn't a thought. It was a physical thing. It seized my throat. The coxswain screamed, "20 seconds! Stand by! Stand by!" The LVT hit the beach. It lurched to a halt, the engines screaming. The ramp, the front ramp, slammed down. "Go! Go! 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 Get off! Get off!" The NCOs were kicking us, shoving us out into the open. I hesitated. For just a second. I was paralyzed. A boot hit my back. "Move, Sledge! Go!" I stumbled and fell out onto the beach. I didn't hit sand. I hit water. We were still in 2 feet of surf, and the heat. It was a physical blow. It was a furnace. The bombardment had set the entire island on fire. The air was superheated. It was like opening an oven door. And the noise. It was no longer a roar. It was a cacophony, a high-pitched, hysterical shriek of metal. Machine guns, rifles, mortars, our own artillery, men screaming. I got to my feet. "Run! Run!" I saw a small ridge of coral, a low berm, maybe 30 yards up the beach. It was the only cover. I ran. I've never run like that. I was clumsy, loaded with gear, splashing through the water. Zzz-it, a sound like a wasp, zipped past my ear. Crack. Another, sharper. That was a bullet, I realized. That was at me. I heard a thud. A man near me. A guy from my platoon. I didn't even see who it was. He just folded. He just dropped face first into the water. No scream, just gone. I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I reached the coral berm and dove. I slammed into the sharp coral, scraping my arms. I didn't care. I was safe. I was alive. I pressed my face against the coral, shaking. My heart was a thing, trying to hammer its way out of my chest. I had made it. I was on Peleliu. I lay there for, I don't know, seconds? A minute? I tried to control my breathing. In, out, in, out. I was here. I slowly lifted my head. Nothing in my life, nothing I had ever read or seen or dreamed could have prepared me for what I saw. The beach was a nightmare. It was littered with bodies, with parts of bodies. A Marine lay just yards from me. His face was gone. Just a red mask. Another man was sitting upright, propped against the coral, but his entire lower half was missing. He was dead, but his eyes were open, staring. The white coral was stained, streaked with blood, and the smell. It hit me, underneath the smell of cordite and smoke. There was a new smell, a thick, sweetish, nauseating smell. It was the smell of butchery, the smell of opened bodies, the smell of death. My stomach, which had been ice, heaved. The terror, the sights, the smell. I couldn't hold it. I turned my head. I fumbled with my helmet strap. I couldn't get it off. I just turned and was violently ill. I retched again and again. My guts emptied onto the coral. My first act of war, my first moments in combat, and I was puking from fear. I felt a profound shame. I was a Marine. I wasn't supposed to be scared. I wasn't supposed to be sick. Then a hand, a huge hand, slammed my helmet. Clang! It was my squad leader, a gunny, an old breed veteran. His face was black with soot. His eyes were wild. "Get your head down, Marine," he screamed at me. "Get your head down. You want to die?" He wasn't looking at my shame. He didn't care that I was sick. He only cared that my head was too high. He threw me an ammo can. "Make yourself useful. Fire your weapon. Fire at the ridge." I fumbled with my M1. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely release the safety. I peered over the coral. I saw nothing, just smoke and a coral ridge hundreds of yards away. "Fire!" he screamed. I pointed my rifle and pulled the trigger. Bang! The rifle kicked my shoulder. I had fired my first shot. My first day on Peleliu is a blur of terror after that. We didn't advance. We just held on. We clung to that tiny strip of beach. The Japanese fire was relentless. It never stopped. All day, mortars, snipers, machine guns, men died, all around me. Men I knew, men I'd trained with. Night came, and it was worse. The blackness was total. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. But the sounds, the Japanese, they tried to infiltrate. They would scream, "Marine, you die," in the darkness. They would throw firecrackers to make us shoot, to give away our positions. And the wounded, all night, we heard them, crying out in the darkness between the lines, "Medic, Medic. Mom, Mom. We couldn't help them. To move was to die. We just sat in our holes, 2 men to a hole, staring into the black, my heart pounding with every snap of a twig. I sat next to Robert Oswald, my friend. We didn't talk. We just sat, shaking. Sometime, near dawn, I looked at him and I realized everything was gone. The patriotism, the fervor from the posters, the illusions of glory, it all just evaporated. It was stripped away by the heat, by the noise, by the fear. War wasn't about glory. It wasn't about God or country or even fighting evil. It was about survival. It was about not dying. It was about the man next to you. It was about the animal, the primitive, terrified animal that lives underneath the uniform. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't a devil dog. I was prey. And the fast battle, the 3-day battle for Peleliu, had only just begun. Eugene Sledge survived his first day, but the quick battle for Peleliu would last for more than 2 months. It would become one of the most brutal, savage, and costly battles of the entire Pacific War. His illusions were gone, but his war was far from over. Ahead of him lay Okinawa. Whose story should we tell next? Let us know in the comments. And subscribe for more Soldiers' Diaries.